go. And welcome back to the third and final session of our first online conference with the Ontario network of CAPC and CPNP projects. My name is Sydney Bell. I'm the program lead. And I'm delighted to move us into this third session with our final speaker. Her name is Mary Mueller. Some of you may be well aware of her, and if this is your first time hearing her speak, you will be hearing some wise wisdom and lots of experience on the topic, especially around FASD prevention. So that's enough of me. I think I will pass it over to you, Mary, to provide any further introduction and to get us started on this topic of the Condom Project.
Well, thanks a lot, Sydney. And I'm so glad to be here today and thinking about FASD and CAPC.CPNP programs instead of COVID-19. So let's take the time to really think about our practice. I know a lot of you have great wisdom as well, so I encourage you to share it in the chat box, because I don't profess to have all the knowledge, and I learn as much from my colleagues and my clients as the information that I have as well. So thank you for coming. I'm really glad that I am last, because I think the previous two sessions were excellent and do connect to FASD. I know I have been helping out with an FASD caregiver group. It's not my expertise, so I've just been helping out, and some of the questions were around gender diversity and how parents can address some of that. But I also wanted to thank the trauma panel that talked before myself. A lot of the things they talked about would apply very well to chatting with women, preconception, pregnancy, and after they've had their child as well. So I think they pair very well, and I hope you can keep some of those things in mind. So I am the chair of the FASD1 Prevention Action Group, and I am not moving on. Hold on. My apologies. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm good now. Sorry. Can you see it?
Yes? Yeah, you're moving on. You're good.
So I wanted to review some of the best practices to prevent FASD, and really to explore what your role can be in the prevention of FASD, whether you are a childcare worker or helping out making meals in the kitchen. All of us have a role in the prevention of FASD. And if you're working with direct service, of course, with clients, of course, you have a role, but there's all kinds of people that set the stage for the prevention of FASD, so we all have a part to play. I'm going to introduce the importance of discussing birth control options for the prevention of FASD, and then we'll chat a little bit about a project we put together that hopefully all of your projects have gotten, condoms, posters, and tear-offs. And if you haven't, well, we can find a way for you to get them. So FASD1 is called the Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Ontario Network of Expertise. It's a volunteer collaborative of parents, practitioners, service providers. Our goals are to prevent FASD and then to create better outcomes for individuals living with FASD, and trying to advance best practice. And sometimes with FASD, there is not a lot of evidence, so we are working on best practice. We have 5 working groups: a diagnostic, an education, an intervention and support. I'm with the prevention group, and I have lots of great colleagues who work with me. And we did have an Indigenous group in the past. That has kind of fallen by the wayside, but we're desperately trying to create a new one. So if you're interested in being part of that, please contact us at the website here, and just go to About Us, Contact Us, and send an email and say which action group you'd like to join. It's not time intensive. We meet every 1 to 2 months and do some work behind the scenes. As some people say, we work off the side of our desk, but I think some of that work is really good work, and it helps if we can all combine our resources. So I'd like to do a little poll, and I'm wanting to find out sort of who is on today. What is your role in your CAPC.CPNP program?
Hi, Mary. I just have a bit of banana in my mouth, so excuse me. I have launched your poll, so you can probably see people are answering there.
Okay.
And while that's going, there's a question from Megan, and she's wondering if FASD includes other substance usage as well.
The definition does not. It's only for those exposed to alcohol when the mother is pregnant. It's a very good question. However, as you know, often women who are using one substance are using another. So it's often very difficult to tease out which substance caused whatever issue we're looking at. And as you know, the brain develops throughout pregnancy, and a lot of these substances will interact with the brain and central nervous system. So when I use the term FASD, we sometimes have termed it neurodevelopmental disorders to include things like autism or perhaps other issues created by other substances. And we'll talk about alcohol. It's the one that's most studied. And we do know it crosses the placenta, and it does cause lots of problems in the development of the child. The other substances, perhaps not as much, but I say perhaps because, again, we don't know what the evidence is going to show as we move forward. And so when you're talking about alcohol, I would also be thinking about other substance use as well.
Thank you, Mary. And I think you can see the results of the poll, but I don't think everybody else can until I end the poll and share the results. So there you go.
I love it. Great cross-section here. That's good. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what we've done is we've created a universal definition of FASD in Canada. It was created by a research network called CAN-FASD, and they function across the provinces in Canada. Ontario used to belong. I have heard they do not belong anymore. I'm hoping eventually when budgets are better, we can belong again, because it's a great research network. So what they tried to do is create a definition so that we are on the same page, but also with very respectful language, so we don't stigmatize anyone. So it's a lifelong disability. It doesn't stop after a certain age. It affects the brain, and that's what a lot of what I will be talking about, but it also does affect bodies of people who were exposed to alcohol as the baby was developing in utero with the mom. Sometimes people use the word womb. I don't care which word you use, as long as you understand what I'm saying. And each person with FASD has unique strengths and challenges, but they will need special supports, and it will differ for every person with many different parts of their daily lives. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the prevalence of FASD, because there's been quite a bit of research on this in the last 3 or 4 years. And I used to always be talking about prevalence being higher than what the stats were saying, and now we know they are. And this has caused organizations to kind of sit up and take notice. And so I think this is our opportunity to be moving forward in some of our work and creating some good evidence-based strategies that hopefully will reduce the prevalence. So the Government of Canada still indicates it's about 1%, but I do know they are acknowledging many of these studies. The recent World Health Organization study found it to be about 2 to 3% of the population. CAN-FASD, who does a lot of our research, is now saying the incidence is 4% in Canada. And most studies would now agree that we're likely looking at least at a prevalence of about 3%. And that's a lot of people in Canada and a lot of people in Ontario. So we do need to pay attention to this and try and address it in the best way that we can. It is recognized as one of the leading known causes of developmental disability in the Western world. And if we look at comparing it with some of our other common disabilities that have an estimated, that we know more about, it's 2.5 times more common than autism, 19 times more common than cerebral palsy, 28 times more common than Down syndrome, and 40 times more common than Tourette's syndrome. I think we're hearing a lot more about FASD. I was really pleased. There was a lot of discussion around how it might relate to the development, encouraging brain development at the Best Start conference. So it was lovely to see that it was mentioned and thinking about it, how it relates to the brain. But I do think we do hear about some of these others more commonly, and we need to start a conversation. Why is the prevalence so high? Well, because women are drinking. And past year alcohol consumption in 2017 was 76.8 for women. 11.9 reported exceeding the low risk alcohol drinking guidelines, and I'll talk about those a little bit later if you're not familiar with them. Daily drinking rates, so women who drink every day, increased from 2.6% in 2001 to 6.8% in 2017. That's quite a significant increase, so we can see that women are drinking more regularly. Hazardous and harmful drinking for women increased from 4.8 in 1998 to 9% in 2017, and that was using the audit test. And binge drinking rates for young women increased in the last decade, but they recently, for young women, have declined a bit. So that's encouraging that maybe our voices are making a difference. Most indicators increase as women's education increases. So many of the things we talk about are more prevalent for women who might have lower education, lower income, but that is not the case for alcohol consumption. But I would say that probably FASD wouldn't be as likely to be thought of in a woman who has more education and income, and we need to change that train of thought. So why are women drinking more? I think this is really important for us to look at and think about how our society might move forward to change the picture around FASD and drinking in our culture. And that's because there was a pinking of the alcohol industry, and for the past 20 years, alcohol industry has targeted women. There's been marketing restrictions for tobacco, wonderful. Alcohol and tobacco, equally toxic substances that cost our system a lot of money, and I would argue we need to be heading down the same road as tobacco, but we're up against a big alcohol marketing group, so we need to make our voices known in a way that people can hear it. So sort of the history of alcohol consumption, we had prohibition initially, then there was controlled access, and then culturally really only men drank. And then the alcohol industry woke up and they said, oh, let's target women. So we saw a cultural change. And then recently we've seen a relaxation and erosion of controls in sales of alcohol. So now we see sales of alcohol in grocery stores. And what that means is it becomes more accepted in our culture, and it will become more acceptable to drink, even if it wasn't before in your culture. Here's some of the things we see around marketing for women. Margarita you can trust, a water cooler filled with wine, and how great that is. That was on Facebook. This beer is making me awesome. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, so I should have a drink. So we've really promoted alcohol to women as a real stress reliever, an image that you need to have, and something that all moms deserve. And I want to play this. I hope it plays. If not, I might have to get out and do something else. But let's try. This is a little clip that Wellington Dufferin Guelph put together, and I think it's a great story, and it sort of shows what Julie's observed around the marketing. I'm just going to turn my sound up because I think, Sydney, that's how we found it worked best.
Okay, I'll let you know.
For years and years, the marketing industry had always targeted men for their alcohol ads. And what happened in the early 2000s is we saw a shift in marketing. The alcohol companies got very wise. They always understood that the women were the people in the household who spent the budget. So the marketing company targeted them for alcohol. There's the mommy wine culture. You can go online and you can buy yourself a flask that is disguised in a diaper bag. New moms who already have all this responsibility and all this stress, and now we're being told, hide it and use it. And to me, this is catastrophic. What is going out there for your children that inevitably they're going to end up seeing somehow, that we need wine or we need alcohol to deal and cope with our kids? It's a lack of self-care, it's a lack of understanding, and we're being conditioned to accept it.
And my PowerPoint back on. Oh, get that again. I just need to go back. Sorry, Sydney.
No worries. You'll find it.
I hope so. Oh, no, I got rid of it entirely. My apologies. Hold on.
It's okay. No worries. That was actually a really great video.
It really shows, come on. Just a second. Does not want to open.
Yeah, there's comments here, people acknowledging that, yeah, it's really on point, that video. Mm-hmm.
Just bear with me. I'm so apologetic. I shouldn't have closed out of there.
No worries at all. If you want to, if it helps to stop sharing for a moment and then share again, that's okay.
Just a minute.
It's okay.
I don't know why my drive is not coming up, and it's not. Come on, baby. Technology, don't you love it? There we are.
There you go.
Just needed to take it in and out.
No worries.
I just can't see where it is. It might be behind here. Oh, there it is. Hold on. I'm going to close that. Can you see it?
I can. I can.
I'm going to get out of the, and just let me slide down.
There you go. You did it.
My apologies, everyone.
Oh, no worries at all.
Okay, so then we want to talk about our pregnancies planned. Well, Public Health Agency of Canada states the rate is about 50%. There's some recent studies done by SOGC that are finding the rates closer to 60%. That data is not published yet, but we need to wake up and take notice of that. So if women are drinking more and we have unplanned pregnancies, which are very high, we would expect the rate of alcohol-exposed pregnancies, which can lead to FASD, to be high. So if we look at the evidence, waiting to talk to women until pregnancy is way too late. So we are maintaining we have to start with all people, and women especially, of childbearing age to talk about alcohol and its effects on a developing baby. Why should we be concerned? Well, if we are only concerned about cost, about $5.3 billion per year to support people with FASD. That number's been up there for quite a while. It's probably higher. FASD has a researcher, an economic researcher, and he says it's about $9.7 billion a year. Some studies have shown that $1 to $2 million per individual is the estimated cost to support those affected with FASD over a lifetime, which is huge. And the rate of FASD is estimated in Canada's prisons to be 10 to 23%. And we know the cost of incarcerating someone and moving them through that system is quite large. So if we can prevent that, that would be much better, and we could save our money for other things. We can reduce the incidence, but we need to be aware of the issue and all the things that cause it, impact it before we can address it. If we were to spend $150,000 to prevent FASD, we would save $1.6 million. That might be higher now. That was in 2013. So I argue that doing prevention and not just doing awareness campaigns is a good return on our investment, and we should be doing it. And a lot of people don't know the risks, the extra risks of alcohol use for women. You can look these up at Rethink Your Drinking. It's a website, and I have it a little bit later on. But women have a lower body weight, so it means it takes less alcohol for them than for men to produce the same level of intoxication. They have less water in their body and more fatty tissues, so alcohol at a greater strength for longer periods of time is in their body when they drink. We have lower levels of enzyme, with alcohol dehydrogenase, which is more alcohol again in the bloodstream, so more negative effects. We have a change in hormone levels that affect how women metabolize alcohol. We do know that risky use of substances before pregnancy leads to higher risk of alcohol use in pregnancy. So we need to be aware of these things to tell women so that we have some of those facts to share. All of these factors around how we metabolize alcohol lead to a higher risk of heart disease and stroke, liver damage and breast cancer, reproductive issues like lower fertility and FASD, and osteoporosis, addiction, and even brain damage. So what factors determine the impact of prenatal alcohol exposure? So the impact of alcohol on the baby depends on when the alcohol is consumed. So because the brain and the nervous system develop throughout pregnancy, depending on when the woman is drinking in that pregnancy will affect what is developing at that time. We also know how often it's consumed. So is it consumed once a month or every day will affect the impact on the developing baby. And of course, we know about binge drinking and how much is consumed. So we know that binge drinking is a very big concern, and it's happening in young women. But we know that binge drinking can cause some more effects than a smaller amount of alcohol. It may also depend on age of the woman who's pregnant. So as you get older, systems don't work as well. So that could be a dependent factor. How well the woman eats can affect how the baby develops. Is she coping with a lot of stressors around the social determinants of health? And some people metabolize alcohol differently than others. And therefore, we would see perhaps a different effect as well. This is Canada's low-risk alcohol drinking guidelines. You can look them up, but basically I'll just quickly go over them. For women, the recommendation is no more than 2 a day, no more than 10 a week. Men, it's 3 per day and 15 per week. The recommendation is that there be some non-drinking days every week to avoid developing a habit. And there is an allowance for special occasions that to reduce your risk of injury, so motor vehicle accidents or sexual assault, that you be drinking no more than 3 drinks at a time, and that would only be for special occasions. And of course, there is a note about pregnancy that 0 is the safest. And I would like to change this. They haven't asked me about this, but I really would. If you are pregnant or planning to become pregnant or about to breastfeed, the safest choice is to drink no alcohol at all. I would also like to say, and if you think you might be pregnant, because a lot of women don't stop drinking until they know they're pregnant. So those are the low-risk alcohol drinking guidelines, and it's important to be able to know those so that you can share them with the public. Alcohol use in pregnancy is really not as simple as just tell women not to drink. And I know a lot of you who work with the populations you work with know that. 2/3 of people with alcohol use issues also have mental health problems. And many women who use alcohol also have physical and sexual abuse. It's not as easy as just telling them don't drink. Assess, provide treatment and support for alcohol use, but also mental health issues and abuse as well. And that's where the trauma-informed information that you got previous to this really comes in. And advising women to stop alcohol use in pregnancy may help light users, but it's unlikely to help women who are using it to cope. Really, everyone is at risk, but women who drink or binge drink above the low-risk alcohol drinking guidelines before pregnancy are more at risk to drink in pregnancy. Women using birth control unreliably are more likely to have an alcohol-exposed pregnancy. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Women in their 30s who work, have waited a long time to have a family until their career is established, are also more likely to have an alcohol-exposed pregnancy because they don't want people to know they're pregnant because it could affect their work trajectory. And then women socially struggling with the social determinants of health. Basically, what I'm trying to say is FASD doesn't discriminate. It affects anybody from any culture, race, age, socioeconomic background, and we should be talking to all women about this. If a woman has a partner who drinks and has addiction issues, we know from the research that there can be pressure put on that woman to drink in pregnancy as well. I also want you to think about some of the women in your programs who may have learning disabilities. And you might want to consider, since we don't have near enough diagnostic capacity in Ontario or in Canada, that she might have undiagnosed FASD, and you may need to speak to her in more plain language and do repetition and think about how you might address some of those issues. And women who use other substances, of course, as we said, are more at risk. And women who have had a previous child who was exposed to alcohol in pregnancy, even if that, especially if that child does not seem to have any issues, then the woman will assume that she's fine to drink some alcohol in pregnancy, and maybe in the second and third may even drink more. So I want to ask a little bit, another little poll. Do you currently discuss alcohol and birth control together in your programs?
Okay, Mary, I'm just launching that poll right now. And we've had a few questions coming up. Do you want some of them now, or would you like me to save them?
Can I wait till the end?
Of course you can. I've got them. So anybody who's asked questions, I've got a little list here.
So I see there's, oh, we're switching around here. So I see about 42% of no, not at all, which concerns me a little bit. And we have some work to do. I see people addressing it in a group, which is very good. I always found that a little bit difficult, but we sometimes used a game to play, and that was helpful. Yes, when asked. Yes, all women was only 4%. So I think we've got some work to do. We would like to propose that we do it with all women on a universal practice so that all women are getting that message. In CAPC programs as well as in CPNP programs, because the CAPC programs, those women are could potentially be preconception again and ready to have another child. So we put together this, it's called the Condom Project. I don't know how it got called this. I actually have a little bit of problems with the name, because a condom is just the symbol for birth control, but it does something that can be given to all women to help protect them from an alcohol-exposed pregnancy. So it's a prevention kit. It targets both men and women. It's meant as an opportunity for you to start the conversation and bring attention to the prevention of FASD. Everybody should have received a kit with posters, condoms, and tear-off information sheets. Admittedly, we did not have as many condoms as we'd like, but a new budget year is coming, and if you think that those are helpful for you, as well as the resources, it would be good for you to indicate to that to us, and then perhaps we can advocate to get some more. So the poster has English on one side and French on the other. And then there are tear-offs, sorry, that's a little blurry, that you can tear off and give to the woman after you've had a short conversation. So what are the messages? Basically, if a woman is pregnant or planning a pregnancy, there is no safe time, safe amount, or safe kind of alcohol. And then drinking alcohol during pregnancy can cause FASD, and then the definition is on that we've already went over. And then what else is the message? Basically, the message is make plans to prevent FASD. So plan ahead. Use birth control that's appropriate for both partners every time to prevent a pregnancy that could be exposed to alcohol. I'm sorry the word sex is not in there, but it was a bit of a political issue to put that word in there, but I think people get the idea. Talk to your healthcare provider about birth control options that you will use, not ones that you won't use. Talk to your healthcare provider about your alcohol use, and then there's that rethink your drinking again. Drinking alcohol can affect your ability to make safe decisions, and again, that's sort of the Me Too movement. And both partners must provide consent before having sex or intimacy. So those last two messages are important ones to give as well. So how do we want you to get the message out? Well, it's a conversation starter. We hope you take it to your CAPC.CPNP programs. If you have health fairs, events, use it wherever you think you can get the message out to women in their childbearing years and men as well. Basically, you know, the message is there. More than half of all pregnancies are not planned, so we're putting many pregnancies at risk for FASD, and we want them to use birth control that's appropriate for both partners every time to prevent an alcohol-exposed pregnancy. If you drink alcohol, you need to make plans to prevent pregnancy. So that's based on research, and it's hard sometimes to put it in a short amount of words, but the idea is that you would put it out on your desk or at your program or wherever you are that people might see it. You might want to take some of the condoms. When you run out of ours, you can put some of your own there, and then you can have a very brief conversation. So I have another poll. Will these resources make it easier for you to have brief conversations about alcohol and birth control? And you can just quickly indicate whether you want to do those.
Yes, I've launched the poll. I hope people can see it.
Just a minute. I maybe have to close the other one, do I?
Let me just relaunch it, because that happens every once in a while. So I'm going to end it and poll process, relaunch, poll 5. Okay.
There we are.
Okay. So hopefully, folks, everybody can see the poll there. Yay.
So I see the majority will use them in their CAPC.CPNP. It may encourage clients to ask about it. Yes, they'd like more condoms. I agree with that. And no, I don't think I will use them. If you're not going to use them, give them to a program that will, because I think that would be a good use of resources as well. So thank you.
Okay. Here, share the results.
And then prevention of FASD, is it as easy as just telling women not to drink? So I hope all of you have seen this before. It's 4 levels of prevention. It is a research-based approach that has been used. It's developed in Canada, and it's been used around the world. So the first level is basically just raising awareness. It's the foundation level of the other 3 levels of awareness. Provincial and local campaigns would fit into that. Sandy's Law, which I'll talk about in a second. We need to do it, but on its own, it's not going to probably change everyone's behavior. So we need to think about this as one strategy that needs to be used in conjunction with the other 4. Sandy's Law is a poster that's required to be put at any place that serves or sells alcohol in Ontario. We have actually developed a new one. This one's old, and the language on it wouldn't be language that we would recommend to get women to take notice. We're trying to change the bill a little bit so that we can change the wording and change the photo. The one we've developed has a lot of different parts of the population, different representations of the population, some pregnant, some not. different multicultural groups, women with probably maybe some challenges, young, older women, and I think it would be a much better poster. So I encourage you to see if we can get that changed, that bill, so we can change the poster. It's been around for quite some time now. So what's your role in this one? So support your local efforts to raise awareness, increase knowledge with your colleagues and agency staff, help to challenge and present evidence that dispel ever prevalent myths, change Sandy's Law wording in the photo, and then use your social media. And I see lots of people using that now, and I'm really pleased, and I think it's a great way to get the message out. The second level, which is why we develop the posters and the condoms, is a discussion of alcohol and the risks for all women and their support systems. So it's probably one of the most effective strategies to reduce alcohol-exposed pregnancies. I would like you to remember that health and social service providers are seen as a real credible source of information, and you can lead to behavior change, so don't doubt your power of change. We can shift the reproductive health lens from pregnancy to also include preconception, and I know many of you are working on that. You can see this is an older study, but 43% of women and 32% of women planning a pregnancy did not recall receiving any information from their doctor. So we need to, again, get the word out. We can be part of that information and move forward to change the amount of pregnancies that are alcohol exposed. So what would your role be? Well, make sure the conversations you're having are safe about alcohol use with all women and men of childbearing age. Provide the key messages around safer alcohol use. Discuss the importance of reliable birth control if they're using any alcohol substances, and then link to services if needed. That's our role. This is a great resource. It's done by Nancy Poole and her crew out west, and it looked at how we should be discussing alcohol and substance use as well with women. So what they found is that brief interventions are conversations between an individual and a provider regarding a health issue. Could be abuse, could be alcohol, could be cannabis, could be anything. And that you can use lots of practice approaches. Not one is right over the others. And successful brief interventions. And I think that's important when you're working in a program that has lots of time constrictions and lots of things happening at once. It doesn't have to be long, but it does need to be collaborative between you and the person you're talking to. It definitely needs to be non-judgmental. And as was said before, we need to recognize women as experts on their own lives. And brief intervention with Indigenous women should be culturally grounded. And I won't say I'm an expert in that area, but those of you who work with that population I know are, and you would be thinking about how you should present it. And how do we start the conversations? They could be formal or informal. Somebody takes the condoms. You invite them to take the tear off and ask if they have any questions. Could be structured or unstructured. It could be short or it could be long if the client wants to talk more. It could be a one-time thing or a series of conversations over a period of time. It does not require extensive time and resources. It's really the quality of the conversations, meaning the women has the ability to hear what you're saying and accept it and think about it, that can really support and influence the success. So how do we start? Sometimes service providers are reluctant to ask women about their alcohol substance use. Maybe they're afraid they're going to jeopardize a relationship with them, perceived as judging and shaming. But I think it's important to have regular and ongoing conversations about substance use, period. And that will reduce the stigma because women don't think you're just asking them. So I always say we talk about this with all women so they don't feel like they're being targeted. You need to be really pay attention to issues of consent, confidentiality, privacy, and comfort during interventions, as well as being flexible in how you deliver it. I think the main thing is to just try having conversations. Doesn't go so well, you learn from that and you try again. And I don't think there's really any right or wrong. I think the right is ensuring we're having these conversations and making it part of our daily practice. One question that has worked for me, it may work for you, is how does alcohol fit into your life? It's open-ended. People can answer that however they want, and I don't think there's a lot of judgment with it. And strategies in pregnancy: begin before pregnancy, have brief conversations with all women around alcohol and substance use, be aware of the current research and keep up on that. Provide the key messages around the low-risk alcohol drinking guidelines, refer them to the Rethink Your Drinking website, emphasize that the low-risk alcohol drinking guidelines are upper limits. If you don't drink, that's even better, preconception. Use birth control if you're drinking any alcohol or using substances. And I would also recommend that women be using a multivitamin for all women of childbearing age. So some people will be more comfortable with a screening tool. There are lots of them here. If they work for you, go ahead and use them. They don't work so well. I didn't find, for me, I found it a little bit stilted. But if it's working for you, continue to do it. If they're using alcohol, it's important to assess how often, how much, and why they're using, and sort of their self-perception of the use. If they're not bothered by it, you probably can ask if they'd like to know more about it. If they don't, I think you need to stop the conversation there and try it again. So there are lots of supports available. I would indicate that you not just address the addiction, you also pay attention to some of the other stresses in their life, such as food, maybe some support systems they might need, housing and shelters, telehealth, mental health counseling services. I think it's important in your own local area to network and develop partnerships with some of those other programs, because they will be able to help you in your work. We can't work on our own, and we need to know how to work together and how to make some of those referrals. So it's important to be being aware of the other programs and working collaboratively. Some of the things to keep in mind we've talked about: be respectful, develop the relationship with the woman, realize that the woman is going to determine where she goes, that we don't just focus on the baby, we focus on the benefits for the woman, that we have the courage to have a harm reduction approach, not just abstinence approach, that we are trauma informed, that we do promote health, that it's a culturally safe place for women, it's supportive of mothering, and that we use a disability or a neurodevelopmental lens. Some women may have learning difficulties, and we need to talk to them in a way that they can hear it and understand it. Level 3 is basically providing specialized support for pregnant women with alcohol and social concerns. So it's basically the same. Talking about support services, having that conversation. During pregnancy, we should have that conversation more than once. Be prepared, even though it's not comfortable for all of us, to take a harm reduction approach. Could we reduce alcohol use if the woman's not ready for abstinence? And really, it's important to include her support network as well. What's your role? Well, help women to access the services, have those brief conversations, ask and advise multiple times, encourage all women to abstain from alcohol use. If she's unable to stop, encourage her to drink less. Be non-judgmental, be gentle. It might be the first time she's shared this information with anyone. And if she does share with you, don't forget to thank her for sharing. Discuss the impacts on the developing baby. Surely acknowledge that many pregnancies are unplanned, and emphasize that you can't change the past, but they do have control over their future. What strategies will reduce? Support and referrals, include her partner. Support can take many forms, we've talked about that. Sometimes your role may be harm reduction, and that's okay. And we need to be comfortable with that. And level 4 is basically woman's had the baby, and now we want to support that baby if the baby has had some substance use exposure. And I know that in our area, infant and child development programs are seeing the babies that have been substance exposed, even if there do not appear to be any deficits at birth. Ensure she has a supportive parenting service, support her to remain alcohol-free, discuss the effects of alcohol use on breastfeeding, and again, ensure the mother has access to reliable birth control. And we should do that soon after she has her baby. So I don't know if we have time for this, do we?
Hello. Yes, we do. Sure. What the heck?
What level of FASD prevention is practiced in your community?
There we go.
I think it's important.
I've launched it. Do folks see it? Yes, looks like people are answering.
Oh, very interesting. So I see that people are getting the message around some action in their community in all levels. We have that about 34. Level 2, which is the hardest one, is about 9%. So this is a good webinar for you then, because you can address it and try to start talking about it. We see lots of talking in pregnancy, 30%, community awareness campaigns, which is what we often see, 39%. Alcohol policy, just about 1%. So keep trying. I think we will get there, but we need to be aware of what's happening. I don't think I have too much longer. And this is an idea around alcohol policy. Ontario does not have an alcohol strategy, and we need to keep advocating for that in Ontario, because provinces that have it have probably better evidence-based policies than we do. So things that work are regulating the physical availability of alcohol, so not having it being sold in the street, things like that, having it only being sold at LCBOs. Although I think we've lost that fight, I think we need to advocate that it not be sold in convenience stores. That will make a big difference to the amount of alcohol that's being used in our communities. Controlling the affordability, so if it's at a price point where it makes people think twice about drinking too much, then that can affect how much people drink. Placing restrictions on marketing, I think we really need to work on this one. It needs to become similar to tobacco marketing. Develop drinking and driving prevention and deterrence. I think we've done a really good job on that one in Ontario. Modifying the drinking context. You can only drink in certain places. Our legal drinking age is 19, and I keep thinking that's great, because some of the provinces around us are 18, and usually the older a person starts to drink, the less alcohol they drink as they get older. Not always the case, but certainly on a whole. Develop education and persuasion strategies, and then we need to also ensure we have treatment and early intervention services. So summary, the purpose of our project is to help you begin a discussion about alcohol and birth control with all women and men. This action fits under level 2, which some of you are struggling to incorporate in your programs. So I hope you try some of these things and even get back to me and tell me how things are going. However, to be effective, we need action in all levels of prevention, including supportive alcohol policy. These are services. I think most of you know them. There's addiction services, there's Best Starts Prenatal, Primary Health Provider, Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Sometimes people want to go outside of their region for addiction support. In pregnancy, of course, Healthy Babies, Healthy Children would be an option. Sometimes Family and Children's Services are involved, CPNP programs, and support for social determinants. Postpartum, once a mother has her baby, she's considered preconception again. So some of those same services apply. And some specialized services like infant and child development, pediatricians, FASD Coalition, children's treatment centers. And I think we've covered all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Lots of interesting comments and gratitude expressed in the comments, and lots of questions. So I don't know if we'll have time for them all. There were definitely questions around the information that was sent out, like when were the kits sent out? How do we get the kits? So I'm not sure how you want to address that.
Well, Public Health Agency of Canada sent them out for us, and that was very kind of them because we don't have the money to do that. So it would have gone probably to the sponsor of the project. So if they not filtered down to direct service, I would be asking whoever it is that's leading your CAPC.CPNP projects to find them on their desk.
Okay. There was one question around the kits being received after being shipped in a freezing weather, and does this compromise the quality of the condom? Should we distribute condoms that have been, I guess, frozen or shipped in freezing weather? Do you know that?
I know about heat deteriorates it. I honestly don't know about cold. How would it be, Sydney, as if I look it up and I get back to you? Because I think that's a very important question.
Okay. Do you have time for another couple of questions? I know that you're kind of carving out some time for us in your day.
I'm fine, Sydney. Go ahead.
Okay, let's answer a couple of other ones. There was a question about the definition of binge drinking.
Yes. So when they measure it in studies, it's usually 4 or more drinks. However, if we look at the low risk alcohol drinking guidelines, it's looking at 3 drinks. But in studies, it's usually 4. A binge, I would consider, would be 3 or more drinks. But basically, the more a woman drinks, the more potential damage that could be done in utero. I think it's a really good question.
Okay, and I'll give one more, and I apologize to the folks that, because there were a lot.
Can I just add to that last one? Sorry.
Of course.
And it would also depend on the time period that she's drinking in. So 2 drinks, one at the beginning of the day and one at the end, would not be considered a binge.
Right.
But having them over a shorter time period, of course, you're going to, with each drink, increase the alcohol level in your blood, and the damage could be greater.
Right. Okay, one last question, Mary. Is alcohol safe for the nursing mom?
And again, there's been a shortage of studies on that. Mother Risk basically did one of the only studies, and basically, if we look at, I think Bastard has done their pamphlet, and it's 2 drinks, if I recall. And if you look at Bastard, they may still have it up. But if we look at that, a woman who weighs less than 180 pounds might be putting that at risk. So I definitely want to support breastfeeding, and some people will want to drink. One standard drink probably had after you've breastfed should have be fine to have then breastfeed the next time. So I would advocate for less is better, but I do think we need to give women some options, and we definitely need to be supportive of breastfeeding.
Okay, thank you so much, Mary. I'm going to just join you here on video for a moment, and wrapping up our session here, and actually wrapping up our time together this morning. But Mary, I know that you rejigged your schedule. You've been called back into active service, and so I know it was an extra effort for you to be here today. So I just want to extend my gratitude to you for making the time and joining us and sharing your information about this great project and your wisdom around FASD. It was great to hear. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to acknowledge that we're wrapping up our morning together, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This has been a really great session, and I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as I have. I have put a link to the evaluation form in the chat box, so I invite you to take a moment to fill that out. I will also include that link in the follow-up email I'll send. And in that follow-up email, there'll be a link to the resources and the slide decks and just the information following through from our morning together. I do want to thank very much both Mary and Kathy, our presenters today, for their time. And the panelists who joined us, Peggy, Jermaine, and Wendy. It was really great to have you with us. And finally, another shout out again to Kelly and Margaret, who helped me over the past months plan and get this session set up, and who helped me today with organizing and in the chat and answering questions and figuring out the prizes. The prize winners have been announced, and those were in the chat as well. And I'll also send that out in the email just in case folks didn't catch that in the chat. But maybe I'll just say really quickly, Carl Mayo and Kimberly C. and Debbie B. won the gender diversity book. The parenting book went to Angie, M.A. Karaded and Cheda, I hope I said that right, and Joanne Morin. And the winners of the gift card are Helen Mullen, Cecilia, and Donna Hepburn. So congratulations to the winners. And I think with that, I'm going to bid everybody a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for joining. I hope this has been a helpful morning for you in finding a space to come together virtually to learn. And yeah, thank you so much. Thanks again, Mary. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon, and we will see you again.
Yes, and thank you, Sydney, for all your hard work making this happen.